Morning guys, I just wanted to do a tattoo progress update video today. So last time I got my roses done on my neck here, and so this time we added these leaves here and here and this rosebud here. The session was like under an hour. It took a little bit of time to figure it out. Most of my sessions are pretty short right now just because having the blackout as the background, when you're putting lines on things, it's just like all of the fill-in is basically done already. And also when you're pulling big lines like these, we used a 14 liner for these lines. That's quite a bit of trauma to the skin, particularly skin that's already been saturated so often. So we just want to lay the groundwork and then come back and shade it later. Even more so than first tattoos. Like when I got this chest tattoo done, it was a couple sessions. The first session was just to get the lines in, for example. Well, even more so when you're going over old, chewed up and scarred work like mine. You want to be very presently aware of any problems that could occur. Also with black on black, as I've spoken of before, it can be a little hard to see what you're doing because the light changes and you can't see a line. Like even now, you can see how when the shadows change, you almost can't see parts of it. And that's not because they're not there. Blackout tattoos in general change a lot with the light. And where the light's shining on you can make you almost brighter or darker depending on the time of day or like say you've got something casting a shadow on you. Even right now there's parts of me that have light hitting them and others don't. So when you're tattooing black on black, it can be really hard. Even say the sun shifts or something, there isn't much sun like light that impacts the tattoo studio that I go to, but every now and then there'll be an extreme change of sunlight and it can change kind of the lighting of the room. Or even you'll change just a slight angle. Say I'll have to turn or something to get to a different spot, and now everything looks a little bit different, a little bit less bright or a little bit brighter, and you almost lose what you're up to. So you always want to get the lines in first when you're doing black on black, and then come back later when you can see where everything is. There's actually a few lines that my artist had to kind of make up on the go because the stencil on black isn't great either. Black on black stencil is only so good. So fortunately for me, I'm with someone talented enough that if the stencil doesn't work that well, they can just make up the rest and it works out just fine. So one thing I wanted to get into is I talked about on my last tattoo progress video that I wasn't sure how well the roses were going to look, like how crisp they would look after they healed, because my neck is fairly dark already. Like it's certainly not a light part of my body, but you can see like the difference in this black and this black. So it's like a shade or two darker. So we've got about a shade or two darker, where with my hands are about the lightest black I have, because hand tattoos, really that's all there is to it. Hand tattoos are always going to be the lightest of any blackout. Mine are pretty dark. I've seen a lot worse, but like they're more of a bluish or grayish black. That's going to happen with hands, especially as they heal. But my neck is quite dark. It's been done several times, so I wasn't really sure how long, or how well those would hold up and how dark they would be when they healed. They did heal quite dark. They healed almost the same as they looked when I got them done. So I have the feeling that my throat and my clavicles will as well. The throat is the hardest one to see of the bunch right now, and that's mostly because your chin and your jaw casts a bit of a shadow over it. It's there as much as the rest. It's interesting to see how the light play really affects this stuff. Because, for example, in my podcast, you won't probably ever see these. because I'll be too far away and the camera doesn't focus in on small details from that distance. But when you're right up close on someone or in real life, you will see them. So black on black tattoos, unless you're taking a really close picture or like a really hyper detail focused picture or video, you probably will miss them. So it is subtle. It's less subtle than I expected it to be, but it's subtle. I would say between white and blackout tattoos, white tattoos maybe are a little less subtle, but I like the look of black on black tattoos more. And it's not because, oh, it's darker or anything like that. It's just, I find that it's a funner way to play with the same idea. Where in white tattoos, you're making the black look darker to contrast. Where with blackout, you're using the old black as the light source, which is an interesting concept. Especially if you're someone who prized having fairly dark blackouts to begin with, it makes it pretty complicated to get dark lines over that. In terms of the pain, I did have a little bit of. See, this is where I know I'm not getting tattooed as much as I used to, and it's starting to have an effect on my psychology. See, I famously have no fear of tattoos ever. Probably partly because I had everything done so many times, and also because like I was getting them done so often. At one point I was getting like 2 to 3 tattoos a week, where now I've slowed down to only 1 every 2 weeks, for all kinds of reasons really. But now it's a different thing for me, so I have time to actually build up anticipation and excitement for the tattoo. But that mixes together with some feelings of dread, like knowing. I don't know if I think I've told the story about my throat. The last time I got my throat blacked out was one of the few times I've ever asked for Bactine, because the first time I ever got my throat tattooed, it was quite scarred, and it had a lot of problems healing, for example. And every time I've worked on my throat since then, it's hurt quite a bit. And the last time it hurt the most. Well, thankfully, this time, it didn't hurt at all. That being said, it was really, really small what we were doing in there, so it was kind of a sprint. You know, it's just like, I think it took like 10 to 12 minutes or something for that little rosebud. So, yeah, it's been interesting getting used to liners again for me, because I haven't had anything lined in years. I did do a whole lot of lining on my original torso, years ago though. Like my tentacles were almost all Lineworks, different needle densities, anywhere from a 1 liner to a 7 to 12, whatever. Every kind of liner was used on those tentacles for the most part. And so it's not like I'm not aware of what they feel like or like have any extensive knowledge of them. It's just that I've been getting tattooed by Megs for years now, and I'm very in tune with that feeling, the shading, like really big broad shading and non-stop. And I will say that between the two, shading and lining, for me, I find lining to be quite a bit easier to deal with long term. It seems to do less damage overall if you're just getting lines done. Where I've said before that when you get a blackout tattoo, say you do half your arm or full arm or your whole side or your stomach or whatever, it feels almost like you've been beaten up afterwards, like you're very bruised feeling. So you don't really get that with liner. Your skin feels more sunburnt or raked or something with a liner. So there's a difference in how you feel afterwards. And I always felt with blackout tattoos more tired and exhausted physically and a little bit mentally too after a tattoo, where I would go home and I would have all these kinds of plans that I would want to do with my weekend or whatever, and I would just be too groggy to do anything for the first little while. With standard tattoos and this line work that I've been doing, I don't have any of that. It's really breezy. So it's been a lot less painful, and we're moving kind of quick. just because, like I said, we already had the black as a background. So it's faster than the first suit in a way. Now, I will say it's probably for the best that I am moving a bit, like, well, I'm moving slower but faster. As I said, now I'm putting images back, where for years I've been taking them away. And I feel like if I add too much too fast, I might overwhelm myself, where it's like, do I really want all this shit? I gotta make sure that it's stuff that I want and it's stuff that's timeless. So far, all I've done is stuff that I've always liked, and that I really, really want there. Like, I had talked about doing the filigree candelabra thing on my shoulder blade to my neck, but that was when I thought what we were going to be doing would be a lot less complex. I thought it would be a lot more limited than what it is. So I was setting at the time what I thought were realistic goals. So I didn't want to be thinking we could achieve things that we couldn't. So, for example, now I know that we can do really just about anything we want, and we can make it detailed too, but it won't punch you in the face to look at me. You'll have to really be like, what's that? An interesting effect of adding these leaves, for example, was they play with your eye, where you notice the leaves and then you go, oh, what's the rest of it? It's kind of like it helps the rose stand out. So yeah, but it's been interesting for me adding new images, and I want to take that slow and kind of finish one thing at a time, and not get to the point where it's too much too fast. And I've been used to staring at, well, mainly 5 or 6 tattoos, and all of a sudden I have a full suit of tattoos again. Probably by the end of the year I'm going to have quite a bit. And it's just about making sure that when you start that third suit, that you get the things you want there. And I mean, obviously I can always black them out again, but it's going to be hard to get even darker blacks over that. Because I've had people say, well, you can just black it out and do something else. That only is so good for so long, because eventually you're going to get to a saturation point where you can't get too much darker. And I've said, no matter how many times you hit it, you can always get darker. But once your skin is fully saturated, like, maybe I could go a little bit darker. Who knows? I mean, there was room to get darker here. But it's going to reach a point where you're at the end of it. You're not going to get any darker. I push back on the notion, though, there's some black workers that I know of that say that one pass, whatever you get is what you get, and that's nonsense. But there is a point. I believe there's a point for any skin tone where it can't be saturated darker. So eventually you reach that point, you can't really keep covering things up and then doing new designs and stuff like that. So that's something for me to be aware of long term, is whatever I do this time is probably going to be the final work. So I'm trying to make that final work as good as I can and as inspired as I can, and in a way what I would have done the first time, but different, I guess, because I still like a lot of that old stuff. I just didn't like the way it was executed, which is I've already talked about in my why I blacked out video. But yeah, I haven't been too forward about sharing these projects on my Instagram, because I feel like you almost need to do it on YouTube, where you can explain it, process step by step, because people have no vision. Like I've said this all along. I never once ever said that I was just doing a full body blackout suit, but everyone, as soon as you start blacking out your torso or something, everybody thinks that's the end game. And it's like, no, I was very clear that I wanted to keep getting tattooed. I didn't want to stop getting tattooed. I wasn't finished yet. Who knows when I'm finished, right? Obviously. But everybody assumed that once it was blacked out, that was it. And it's like, no, I've said a million times that that wasn't the case. So when you share stuff like this, for example, where it's just lines, I feel like people with no vision, even though I've showed them what this looks like healed, and like the long goal of this, even though that's been seen, people still aren't going to equate this with this. They're going to think, oh, well, that doesn't look very good. It's barely there. You can barely see it. That kind of a thing. So I just didn't want to share that too much with Instagram until it's kind of done. I'll probably show a few pictures, but like I'm not going to be doing too many. Like say I won't do any photo shoots until the work is finished, because people don't grasp the larger concept, which is really something you need to be able to do if you're going to be getting a bodysuit tattoo, even just the first one. You need to be able to look down the road. You need to be able to go for that first lining session and go, yeah, it's just ghost lined right now, but it's going to be this cool tattoo one day. You have to be able to do that. I can do that like to a never-ending extent. I can see a patch of blackout that big and go, yeah, but one day it's going to be my whole leg. That takes commitment and focus, and the greater online community really doesn't have that. So I've said it before, but if I say something's going to happen, unless I die tomorrow, I will get there. So when I say these will be like this, that's a promise. That's not a maybe. That's not I think so. That is a guarantee. But most people can't think that way. It's like, well, what if it doesn't? It's like, well, so what if it doesn't work out the first time? You go and you do it again. Like, that's what you have to do with tattoos if you want them to look good. And I just feel like that's something that society today is lacking. So anyway, that's part of why I've been a bit more secretive about this progress. And I'll just show these off one more time. So once again, the roses are healed and the leaves are fresh. There's almost no difference. The rosebud. And they'll be dot shaded similar to this. So maybe a bit darker. Who knows? Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.